Ashwin Willemse incident at the weekend highlights a number of issues that plague South African society. And even though this is not only a race issue, it does have a race dimension. Willemse ensured this by making reference to Mallet and Botha's career spanning the apartheid era. So when SuperSport CEO Gideon Kobane tells the nation that the investigation found that the incident wasn't racially motivated, he insults the intelligence of the nation.
Like I think Alton's this whole Alton thing has run its course now. I think I tweeted during the test season last year, if I'm not mistaken. I said that he's been given an extended run in that side now.
It's either that or Willemse caved when the weight of his statements and the implications bore down on him.
Alton, for me, that thing has run its course. He's a good Super Rugby player. That's my view, and I don't think he'd ever be better than that.
Willemse's apartheid statement immediately polarized white and black South Africans. And in the wake of that statement, many white South Africans have called for evidence of racism. Look, I get that being accused of racism is a serious thing, and many white people are looking for mitigation because it seems to have become a stain on an entire racial demographic, which of course it isn't. But the evidence they seek can't be provided in the manner they want. Nobody can ever explain to you the sense of being subtly undermined, oppressed or discriminated against.
The type of form that Alton turns in with the Lions, it's not going to translate to the next level because he doesn't have the temperament required for that stage.
It's futile to try and explain that. You just know. And Willemse just knew. There's levels to this shit. And the science of subtly making one feel less than is a skill that an alarming number of white people are beginning to master.
So I mean, like I respect your view. I respect your view that Alton's a good candidate and he's certainly playing well in Super Rugby. But where do we draw the line and go, we've given this kid enough chances now?
And it would be remiss of me not to mention the overt racism coming from the black side of this argument.
So SA Rugby's lapdog, SuperSport, are busy flighting a PR exercise for their masters at the moment. Details how the game's governing body aims to turn around misfortunes across a number of facets in their business. At the forefront of that change is Mark Alexander, a man whose integrity is at best questionable.
Going back to the issue, personally I feel like a frank and honest conversation between all the parties involved solves this. Mallet and Botha need to examine themselves for prejudice and then engage Willemse, seeking to understand his position.
Bok brand is at its lowest point since that time that only white folk could play for the team. This was evidenced recently when the Welsh press encouraged their local supporters to have perspective about the Bok win, because this Bok side, they said, was one of the poorest in history.
This will require a high level of emotional maturity from all the parties involved.
Furthermore, amateur administrators, many of whom are entrenched in their jobs despite gross incompetence and negligence, have played their part as well. Jake White is right when he calls for a sweeping audit of their performance and measures to establish accountability for their performance. But Coetzee has contributed to the brand's erosion through bad coaching.
And I hope it happens. But there's a couple of things I'll never tolerate. And one of them is the smear campaign that ensued against Willemse after the incident.
Coetzee has compounded his problems by trying to sell the lie that the Boks have improved under his leadership, and by his refusal to take responsibility for their struggles. We've seen this behavior before as Bok coaches realize their time is up, and his is up.
So Rapport runs a story quoting an anonymous source who claims to have insight into Willemse's deep incompetence. This source says Willemse seldom prepares for shows and relies on Mallet and Botha to do that. The source also claims that he often doesn't pitch for work commitments and functions. If this is the case, I wonder how Willemse still has a job. Surely SuperSport need to hold him to the conditions of his contract.
Bok coaches should be judged primarily on their results. An 11 from 25 return wouldn't be good enough for Fiji, who are now just 2 ranking spots below us. So why should it be good enough for the once mighty Boks? What's more, he's fueled the racist belief that black is inferior by exhibiting his own inadequacies so gloriously and picking a clutch of black players who have no business wearing the Bok jersey.
I mean, why would SuperSport tolerate this behavior? Especially in light of there being a deep pool of people who can do Willemse's job. I have serious reservations about the objectivity of that source. It's the kindest way I can put it. Shifting focus away from race
when there are better black players available to him. And while selection may be subjective, performance isn't. Many of those black players he picked let him down consistently, yet enjoyed his unwavering support. That, for me, is criminal.
And towards the supposed incompetency of a black man is one of those levels I mentioned earlier. Finally, I want to talk about language and the use thereof being central to the perception of competency. English is Willem's second language, and yet he's mercilessly gunned down for his articulation of thoughts and the pronunciation of some words. Here's a thought. Maybe if the color of his skin didn't bar him from attending junior schools that would have refined his English, he would have spoken the language well enough for you to consider him competent. The use of language is undoubtedly tied to the perception of competence, but in this case, it's a poor measure of the analyst that is Willem sir. And lest we forget, Nas Botha tackles English with the same proficiency he tackled in his playing career, yet he gets a pass. I can also think of a handful of English first language supersport presenters who aren't subjected to the same criticism despite making a career from speaking in sporting cliches. Looking at the issue broadly again, do I think anyone should be fired? Absolutely not.
But don't get me wrong, firing Coetzee won't solve the deeply rooted problems in our game. That will require a level of personal investment and intelligence that the suits at SA Rugby don't possess.
What purpose would that serve? The objective must be to model reconciliation, and in so doing, pour water on the flames of racial hate.
Because it is gasoline to the already raging fire of racial hate. All this must culminate in Coetzee being fired at a meeting with his bosses on Friday. He won't resign, he must be pushed. A package reportedly worth 4 million rand a year is enough motivation for him not to resign.
But this has to be an authentic process where all the parties involved listen to the other with the sole intent of understanding and never replicating the behavior, conscious or unconscious, that sparked this ugly moment in our sporting history.